Look very Miami. It's hot here.
Yeah, I look very North Pole. All right. Thank you so much to all of you that are here with us today live. Queria agradecer todos vocês que estão aqui com a gente hoje na nossa live, no nosso Morning Bites. É um imenso prazer a gente. É um imenso prazer a gente estar aqui hoje com a nossa speaker, Angela, que está diretamente falando com a gente da FIU, dos Estados Unidos, em Miami, e ela é uma grande especialista em Early Childhood Education. A Angela trabalha há muitos anos com essa área de pesquisa em Making Thinking Visible, na área de Early Childhood Education, conectado aos Habits of Mind. Ela é uma grande representante do Project Zero, na área do sul da Flórida, e é com muito prazer e muita honra que a gente recebe a Angela aqui conosco hoje. Então, Angela, thank you once again. I've been speaking Portuguese to introduce you to everybody, but it is such an immense pleasure and honor to have you with us straight from South Florida and sharing a lot of your knowledge and background and ideas and research with us here at Escola Concept. A lot of the research that you do is tightly connected to our educational philosophy in early childhood education. So we cannot wait to hear everything that you have to share with us today.
Muito obrigado, Priscila. And thank you for your kind introduction. I am very happy and honored to be here sharing some of my experience.
Thank you, Angela. And I had the pleasure of meeting Angela on a few occasions, but 2 years ago, actually, exactly 2 years ago, I had the opportunity of attending the ICOT, the International Conference on Thinking, that Angela so gracefully hosted at FIU with several very, very prominent speakers from around the globe that were really focused on thinking in education in general. And Angela was a great source of inspiration for me during that conference. And I'm so happy that we got to have her here with us today. Earlier this year, Angela also hosted a conference on play connected to early years education. And this was hosted right before the closing of all of our cities, all of our countries, all of our schools. So she was very fortunate to be able to squeeze that in right before the big shutdown. But today, Angela gets to enlighten us. Unfortunately, we were not able to be part of that conference. But today, Angela gets to enlighten us with the research that she has done and with the work that she has also inspired in the many preschools that she herself has founded, not just in the US, but around the globe. So Angela, I'm gonna pass the word over to you. And again, thank you, and it's an honor to have you.
Thank you, thank you. So should I share my screen?
Yeah, go ahead, absolutely.
Okay. Once again, thank you for having me here. What I'll be sharing here are experiences from the different centers that I had the pleasure to collaborate around the world, different countries. So the thing that brings us today together is making thinking visible through play. Because play is a very important venue that children externalize their thinking. And we need to value their thinking if we want to improve the quality of play. So let me start sharing a personal story. This is my daughter, Michelle, 23 years ago. She was the most playful girl and a very happy and creative child. It was time to go to school. This was, she was going to second grade. And sadly, her place was replaced by worksheets and testing. Michelle was not happy anymore. She was starting to get disengaged, and she began to complain with stomach aches. So I began my exploration, and I found out that there was no play, which was something very important for her. So that pushed me to start looking for schools that offer play. I didn't care about the academics. I was just looking for a place that offers her play. And I was lucky to find a school that offered a program that was called Micro Society. In Micro Society, the last 2 hours of every day, the school becomes a school, a city, a society where there's a banking, the government, factories, TV station. Michelle was working in the TV station. Then she continued playing in high school. And she was admitted to Carnegie Mellon, where she was still able to play. And now she continues playing. She became an engineer, but now she gets paid for playing. I wanted to share this story because I am sure this is the story of many children. And I am very happy that Michelle raised her voice until she found her right to learn through play. The Article 31 from the United Nations Convention on the Children's Rights tells us that every child has the right to rest, to leisure, to engage in playing and recreational activities appropriate to the age of the child, and to participate freely in cultural life and the arts. So what brings us today is to talk and advocate for children's rights to play. So that made me think about 3 important goals. Why play, considering that this is a children's right? How does play make thinking visible? And something that teachers always think, okay, if I engage children in too much play, what happened with the academics? Yeah, and we also want to bring play and the academics and the curriculum. So Tony Wagner, in his research and his publication, The Global Achievement Gap, he says that our students leave schools equipped to work in jobs that are disappearing in a fast economy. Well, see what's happening now with COVID-19. Were we prepared? Now we see everybody trying to do new things, teachers teaching online, trying to find the way, better solutions, vaccines, masks. So everybody is reinventing. So we had to put a big doses of resilience to survive this crisis. So in his research, he interviewed employers, he interviewed teachers, he interviewed students, and all people that are part of society. So from his interviews, what he found people saying is that we can teach people when we hire them, we can teach them techniques, but we cannot teach them to think. There is a problem with entrepreneurship because there's a lack of initiative. Children are waiting for someone to tell them what to do. And let's keep in mind that yesterday's answers do not solve tomorrow's problems. See us now with this pandemic, with the COVID-19. We are clueless, still clueless, trying to find questions, trying to find answers to the things that are happening now. So to improve our products, that's what the employers said, or to improve the services that they provide, they need people that solve problems and people that ask good questions. Asking good questions is an art. And it's something that we really need to think. And let's think about all these things through play. Wagner also says that in his research, what he found most interesting and most motivating for any learner is to learn through play, passion, and purpose. So I'll invite today to think about these important elements that help people be motivated. So I organize our discussion agenda in 3 topics: the nature and benefits of play, play and thinking, and learning through play and curriculum. If we talk about the nature of thinking, we can see a lot of branches and the type of play. We can think about all kinds of play: child-initiated play, group play, when children play with open-ended materials, that means a lot of recycling materials, when they play with blocks. But my invitation today is to think about play not depending on toys or on something that someone elaborated. I want you to think about the child as an agency in the child, how the child is how play is child initiated. And there are many ways to see this. So I'm just covering up a tiny little part of play. What you see in this picture is children enacting the 9/11 tragedy. I took this picture to the 3-year-olds the day after 9/11. I wonder if the parents were aware that the children were watching the news or they were listening to what the adults were saying. I think everybody was talking about that. So this is a sign that play makes children's thinking visible. Children use play to externalize their thinking, to externalize their theories, to externalize the things that they want. And a child action can be considered as a question. So that is an invitation for adults to observe children closely, to document, and to invite children to analyze and reflect that documentation of their play. David Perkins says that learning is a consequence of thinking. I want to invite you to think about this quote, because when we're talking about thinking, we're going to, throughout this journey, we're going to see thinking through the eyes of play and how play helps children learn. Children use different languages to learn. And for those of you who are familiar with Reggio Emilia, we talk about the 100 languages of children. And we want to learn and appreciate how children externalize their thoughts. We also want to highlight the importance of play to help children develop different skills. And when teachers are concerned, when are they learning math? When are they learning to read and write? When are they learning music? When are they learning social studies? And play also supports children's social, emotional development. So let's see this short video. I muted this on purpose, but you can imagine what is the child doing here. And just think what's happening in his mind. This image tells us how children create stories. They learn through stories. All the things that they do, they have a story. And while they have a story, they are mimicking. So during play, children develop inner speech. And Piaget says that the inner speech is the stage in language acquisition and the process of thought. So see at the end. I am sure we are all familiar with this and the richness that's taking place in this child's mind. So our job is to invite this child to think about that and to put words to what they are saying. Of course, there's a question, it's when is appropriate for the adult to participate or not? But the use of documentation can always help children revisit and talk about their thinking during play. And the best kind of play costs nothing. And the only the only main requirement is imagination. So we want to highlight children's imagination, their curiosity, their agency, and their creative innovation. So as I said, children are always creating stories with any type of the element or toy. A little rock can become an airplane or a monster. So Richard and Perkins says that when learners speak, write, or draw their ideas, they deepen their cognition and they are revealing what they think. So once again, what we need to do is to capture that and invite the children in our appropriate moment to reflect on that. So this comes from a project that I'm doing with young children, helping them recreate stories. And actually, it's not helping them. This is a natural thing that they do. We just provide them with provocations, different types of materials, and they tell us stories. So I want to share one of those stories because drawing is another way of playing for children. Yes?
I miss my dad. So miss him. It was fun.
Well, children tell us what's happening in their lives. So teachers should be listening to children because that brings us to their world, to the things that concern them, and to their needs. And in this way, we can scaffold them in different ways, their language, their cognition, the social emotional development, their personality development, or their aesthetic development. So when we engage children in play, their brain starts making a lot of connections. So a well-play child, he or she develops their brain, and that will guarantee future success in life. See all the many wonderful things that play brings. It helps children become innovative, promotes their curiosity, they become problem solvers, they are always questioning, trying to find answers to things. It supports all their development. Today I will highlight how the children develop habits of mind when they are involved in play. When we see this image, we might think, oh, it's a child playing. Don't you think that somebody many years ago started playing with a paper airplane? And as time passed, someone more curious began to develop. And as people keep growing, that passion or that joy for play becomes a reality. Some kids dream on being pilots, other kids dream on building airplanes. So what are the differences and similarities from this? I would say that the similarities are that play can become work, play is work, because that for a child, play is work. And as you grow, you can work. But if you have passion for that, if you are building, like my daughter as an engineer, she's playing all the time and enjoying her play. Also, that brings passion, curiosity. You take risks. It is very risky. And you learn from trial and error. You create things, you innovate. What would be the difference between this child and those who created that airplane or who are flying that airplane? Maybe time, because many years of iteration and mistakes. I wonder how the Wright brothers were playing since they were young until they created the first airplane. And then another generation, other people took over, and now we see the sophistication. We have airplanes of all types and multiple minds in different times. So that's the only difference. But the child at early ages are inventing. That's a natural gift that we have. So our second point is, let's think about play and thinking. And I would like to use the Project Zero visible thinking framework to organize these ideas. They work with three important questions. What are the ingredients of good thinking? Can good thinking be taught? How? What does good thinking have to do with good learning? As I said, learning is a consequence of thinking. And we want to see thinking as visible, thinking as dispositional. That means having the inclination to explore and learn through play, and thinking as distributed. So David Perkins says that one simple problem with thinking is that it is invisible. Like the little boy who was playing, his thinking was invisible. So the basic philosophy of this initiative is to make thinking more visible in classrooms so that children can so they can see their own thinking. That's very important, this metacognitive process. We want children to see how they think and how they solve their problems. And we also want teachers to see children's thinking at work so they can hold it and improve. So what we want to do is, by revisiting children's play, is to make connections to the type of thinking that was taking place and see how play is helping them learn something new. So the messages that we communicate to our children are very important. We want children to see them as one piece in a community. So this is from a colleague that invited children to put their contribution to their class as human beings. So for example, here we have, I am an important piece of this community because I think a lot. So each child see themselves as thinkers. And when we bring thinking to their play becomes raises the quality of play. So we need to examine the messages that we send children about their thinking, and students should know what is we want them to understand versus what we want them to know about. Because in play, children may not know things, but they wonder, they are curious about things, and they can get a better or a deep understanding on something that they are curious about. So talking about thinking, I did a research with children in different schools asking the simple question, what is thinking? So here we have Isabel, and this child is from Miami, and see how she sees thinking.
My name is Isabel and I do something. So the brain thinks about you or your family or anything. So the brain, when it is enough to think, it goes all the way to your ears. Then your ears, it has ideas. It'll go all sent to your brain again. Then it'll give you the idea. Then you'll have nice pictures to draw. You can have conservations, and you can have.
Okay, so you see she has conversations. So you see how children can have an idea of what thinking is. So I want to share an experience that I had with children from Australia. I was invited as a thinker in residence to that beautiful country, and I visited many schools where play was the main thing that the children do throughout the day. And the teachers were really, really thoughtful about the provocations and type of play that the children were involved. So I asked the Australian children the same question.
About what thinking is?
Having ideas. Mine is an idea right now, making gun cars.
What's every time?
Where you want to put some pieces of a puzzle.
Where you want to put some pieces of a puzzle?
Where they fit. I think when
Books. Ari, when do you use thinking?
When I make a different type of airplane.
When you make
in my book. I don't know which one I want to.
If you had a puzzle in front of you right now, and you had some pieces that needed to go in the puzzle, what would you be thinking about?
Stuck in the head.
Your thoughts would be stuck in your head, but what would you be thinking about? Thinking when you were making your paper planes.
Okay, so you can see how children make connections of play as thinking, because in play, they are problem solvers, they are curious, they work together. So that was a big message and a great opportunity for me to see when we can help the children become aware of their thinking, because my job was to bring the visible thinking ideas to that kindergarten classroom. So what I learned from this is that the best way to engage children in metacognitive processes about play is when they can reflect and use thinking routines such, what do you see here? What do you think about this? And then they become more aware about the value of play. So children usually, when they play, they have goals of what they want to reach. So they try different strategies with trial and error. That in that way, they create their theories. It is important that we think about the thinking process that the child goes through, because that's the only way that we can help and we can when we can have good conversations with children, because those theories are what we make us understand what the children think of their hypotheses and problems that they want to solve. So in this image, you could see a castle, a mountain, a city. When adults see the product of children's play, we always make our own interpretations. But children have different goals, strategies, and theories. So see this child creating this.
Hang on, Max, hang on, I'm not ready. No, you're right, sorry.
I know it's skeleton. Oh.
Hang on, well, you're gonna...
You go.
Max, did you want it to be filmed? Just wait then, go.
Okay, so what you could see here again is how children, through play, they create different habits of mind. So here we could see how they persisted, how he was striving for accuracy, taking responsible risks. He was managing his impulsivity, taking some time to rethink and revisit. When we use thinking routines, we help children manage their impulsivity and revisit and see things again and again, creating, imagining, and innovating, gathering data with all their senses. So children's play many times amaze us. And this is what is amazing for the adult mind. But what we should be focusing more is what's happening in the child's mind, and always ask them questions or document, because there are times when the adult intervention might interrupt the child's creativity. So we can be documenting, being close to them, but not with them in certain moments. So the teacher's role is to listen to the children and offer opportunities. So this is the same child. And I'd like to fast forward because we're running out of time.
We need 2 more.
So here we can see the children thinking flexibly, having humor, responding with wonderment and awe. These are all habits of mind, thinking interdependently, reimagining, opening to continuous improvement, and listening, understanding to others. The habits of mind are important because these are attributes of good problem solvers and people that are curious and pose problems as well. So Dewey says, give the pupil something to do, not something to learn. And the doing is of such nature as to demand thinking and learning naturally results. So for that reason, our role as adults is to provide children with provocations and high quality opportunities to play, to have a high quality play. And here comes the curriculum question. How do we cover all the content and the curricular, all the standards that we are demanded from schools? So let's keep in mind that imagination is more important than knowledge, for knowledge is limited while imagination embraces the whole world. And play has different ways of externalizing. With young children, sensory play is what they mostly do. This is how they discover their world. As they grow, the play becomes more sophisticated, and there are more theories, more goals, and children like to see challenge. So if play offers invaluable opportunities for serious thinking and learning, then how can teachers take children's cognitive engagement, learning outcomes, and opportunity to scaffold their thinking to the next level? So let's think about thinking from a disciplinary understanding and how experts manage things. As kids become older, like the child started with the airplane, little by little, the play becomes more sophisticated. So that takes us to think, to teach with intention. So in this book that I published, there's a compilation of different children's play when they were playing with intention to solve problems, like children at the court, children doing fundraisers, and things like that. So intentional teaching is how experts pose and solve problems and ask questions, take initiative and innovation. So this is an experience in Australia as well. The children were trying to build the city of their dreams. So they first asked a lot of questions. Then they said, where am I going? How am I going? And where next? Mary Helen Modine invites us to think that when we offer children, when the purpose of the education is to increase children's ability to recognize the complexity of situations, that's something that motivates them more to find more solutions. So here, we're almost ready to conclude, but when we set goals, and here comes the sustainable goals, and we want to help others, and that is part of the curriculum, learning becomes more meaningful. So here we have Christopher, who was very curious, and he had the desire to help children from Haiti. So he was engaged in a more sophisticated type of play that it's design thinking. And see how this starts with empathy, defining the problem, ideating, creating a prototype, and then testing. And in his school, they also use the habits of mind. Yeah, so. Yeah, so the children here, they were talking about the empathy for children that have to walk long distances to carry water. So they created a prototype to carry water and at the same time filtrate the water so that the children have the children can have clean water. So here,
is that the most significant thing you learned?
That was like one of the things that we learned, but I think the most.
Did you experience any failure?
Yes.
Yeah, so good thinkers and with a sense of agency, they are also ready to make mistakes. So this is another story in Australia when they wanted to do a city. So they had to learn how to create a city where they can save power, recycle, etc., etc. So that's how they created a city. And this was a second grade. So now, and to conclude, I would like to share a short video inspiring the pedagogy of play with the 4-year-olds here in Miami, and I'm going to pass forward so you could see how the classroom environment and the teachers facilitated their learning that was always combined with play. So we involve parents in all these type of projects. We involve the parents. The parents were responsible for creating these suitcases to travel with their kids. And you could see how they were using different thinking routines everywhere. So here they were taking a trip, and this was another type of play. And this was intentionally provoked, and the children, also child initiated. It was a combination of both, but children were all excited. And here there was an adult intervention. And then we have a little glitch, technology glitch. Okay, so I was almost finished with my presentation. So at the end, the children were basically doing all the things that they explore and talking about their countries and the things that they like to do. And the parents brought a lot of information, and they were also engaged. So with that, I'm going to stop my share and go back with Priscilla.
Wow, Angela, thank you for such an inspiration. I have my other computer open here to the side, and I was able to take some notes during your conversation. And first of all, I want to thank you for inspiring us and for being so connected to everything we truly believe in at Escola Concept. And before I forget, I would also like to thank Kathleen Milanowski, the principal for early childhood education at North Broward Preparatory School, who made this beautiful connection between the two of us so that you could be here today. So thank you so much. I was so impressed during your conversation with how you were able to bring together so many pieces and parts of educational philosophies and make it into this brilliant, very clear talk. So your connection to Tony Wagner, we had Tony Wagner speak in our In Mind series a few weeks ago, and just the idea of solving today's problems with yesterday's tools, that connects to Mario Killinen's talk as well, who we hosted a few weeks ago from Finland. The whole idea behind learning as a consequence of thinking from Perkins, play as thinking. In play, children are problem solvers. They make connections. Metacognitive processes through play are connected to the thinking routines. The whole idea of finding your passion, of taking risks, of creating, imagining, and innovating. So with the habits of mind, how children's actions and children's play can be considered as questions, just how that all brilliantly was sewed in and woven in together. So I want to thank you for that. And we do have a series, a few questions that we would like to ask that have come up from the audience. And one of them connects to the story of Michelle, the story of your daughter. And just like the story of Michelle, your daughter who attended the Micro Society School, Group SEB, which is the group that Escola Concept belongs to, they have two schools. Well, they have 50 schools total, but there's two schools, one in Aracatuba, which is in the state of São Paulo, and the other one in another city called Ribeirão Preto. And these two schools have a city inside the school as well, pretty much what you described with Micro Society. And these cities inside the school also inspire learning through play. So my question to you is more as a researcher, as a parent, as an early childhood expert, what difference do you think these learning environments, such as Micro Society, such as the schools from Grupo SEBI that have these cities within the school, what are the differences that you think that these environments bring to the development of our children?
I think this is, they invite to have more authentic learning. The children are motivated and the learning is meaningful for them. So it's not just playing, it's playing with a purpose, because that's a very important thing. And Tony Wagner highlights that. And there's also the intentional teaching philosophy that we want. And that's something that we can fight for those who kill play, because all children have to learn and they have to do worksheets and they don't learn. No, if you plan properly, proper provocations, that's what it's the term that Reggio uses. You provide provocations that invite children to do. So if you want children to learn in micro society, for example, they have to write their resume. And they have to take some time thinking about the things that they are capable of doing and saying, well, I'm a good thinker in this way. And once that they are involved in play, they are actually, because for children, play is work. Yeah, and why not bringing society into at their level so they can start thinking? I remember the first graders, when I visited that school, they were crying. I said, what happened? Is the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, went to visit and they had to pay taxes. And they were very upset, but they learned that they have to contribute to society through taxes. So those are things that children learn in different ways. And you could do things like you saw with the design thinking with Christopher, that's from North Broward, that they do design thinking. And the children are solving real life problems. And they are building, they are future engineers with the things that they are doing.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to meet Christopher at ICOT a few years ago. And it was so inspiring to hear him speak about his experiences as a learner, but also as a doer, as a problem solver, and solving problems, that are significant and relevant to our world today. So you brought up something really interesting as you were answering this question, and I'm going to go off script a little bit here. But you brought up the idea of, learning is a lot more than a bunch of worksheets. And a collection of worksheets does not mean learning. And Angela, what we have been feeling during virtual school and virtual times, virtual school is new for everybody, right? And the whole concept of, okay, now my child will learn from home. What does that mean? What does that represent? And how much is too much? And how much is enough? And how much is significant? And what we hear from some families sometimes is, well, my child, there's a child down the block, or my neighbor, their school has worksheets and worksheets and worksheets and worksheets, and their child is learning a lot because there's a ton of worksheets. And and for a school like ours, we're kind of taken aback with that whole worksheet phenomenon, right? Just like we have the Finnish phenomenon with education, there's a worksheet phenomenon. So I wanted to hear your thoughts a little bit on worksheet and how worksheets, if they measure or if they do not measure learning in early childhood education, and just if you could share some thoughts with educators and also with parents that are listening to us today.
Yeah, worksheets is busy work. It kills the children's natural engagement to explore. It has nothing to do with curiosity. It's a repetition. It comes from someone else who doesn't know the child. So it's not personal at all. So I'm not a fan of those strategies. And as you mentioned, with COVID-19, many parents had to do the role of teachers, and bringing those practices to their homes, it's harming for the family and for the children. And parents are very stressed. So in all the projects that I share, there was a parental involvement, but the parents were involved in projects that were meaningful for them too. For example, in the house project, the parents were as engaged as the children building the house. Okay, how do we build a house that saves us power? If in the summer, look, the sun comes this way, so we need to create panels here. What are we gonna do with the trash? So and the parents and children were building their houses. The same thing with our world, with the pedagogy of play with the kids. We invited the parents. We told them that we want to know about their cultures. So when they were creating the suitcase, in the suitcase they had to talk about their currency, about the way that people dress in their country, their food, etc., etc. So that's what the kids brought to school. So what the teachers can do with this remote learning is to create that type of projects and involve reading, writing, and math, and see how many, what type of proteins that this food brings from this culture, this other culture, and then compare. When you meet, you meet to share those projects. Yeah, with young kids, okay, how are we going to solve something? Or take pictures of children at play and talk about what were you trying to discover when you were digging into the dirt? Oh, you found a spider. Oh my goodness! And what did you do with this? So it's creating and having the remote learning to share what they've been doing at home, but engaging children and parents at play.
Right. No, that's a fantastic, I guess, a fantastic tip for everybody out there that's listening to us. And also something that got me thinking. I have a colleague who's also a teacher, and she just posted something that was phenomenal yesterday online, where she said students were having their math and science lesson, but they had to go to the kitchen and they had to bake these healthy cookies that she provided them the recipe for. And they had to measure, what's the amount of proteins and carbohydrates and sugars and alcohols and fats, and what were these percentages in each of the portions. And then the children had to sell these portions of cookies to their family members inside the house. And at the same time, so they're using fractions with the recipe, they're using science, they're using the idea of molecules and proteins and carbohydrates, and now they're dealing with money. And then there was the whole idea with the taxes. And she said that some of the children started to cry, exactly what you just shared, because they had to give the money back to the government, right? They had to contribute to society. So I could relate to the IRS example, because when they had to pay the taxes, they were like, well, I don't want to pay. And it's like, well, that's not an option. So they really made those experiences into real world learning opportunities, so that you could bring life inside, the learning of these moments that are happening inside school, right? Inside virtual learning. So,
yeah, and there are different organizations that support children's initiative. For example, Design for Change. In Design for Change, now that we are going through all these hard times, children can have small projects that they can help other children. So that involves them in this citizenship. Responsibility that we all have with our community and with the world.
Right.
And that's also a good provocation for them.
That's true. Very true. I have another question for you that did come up from a member of our audience that said, thinking about the importance of play and also the development of habits of mind, what's the importance of offering open-ended materials to children? And then how can we connect heuristic play to habits of mind?
Oh, that's a really thoughtful question, because that brings what all the open-ended materials bring. An open-ended material is uncover children's mind. You don't know what's the outcome of that. Yeah, and that's when you start testing the goals that the child has and the strategies that they have. So as soon as you present material, open-ended material, their minds start moving. Yeah, and if there are two children, then you can even create more things. So open-ended materials are an invitation. They can bring a lot of questions to children, and children are very curious. What I will rescue out of that is that if you record or help the children verbalize or bring that into a sculpture or something, and they have the children talk about that culture, about that sculpture, that's how you discover their thinking. That's how you are making their thinking visible. And the use of thinking routines always help. For example, what do we see here? Once that they do a sculpture or they create something with that open-ended, what do you see here? You can invite other children if they are doing online learning, for example, so the children can talk about that, and then invite the child to share his or her experience or their thoughts, how they materialize their thoughts using open-ended materials. So open-ended materials are open-minded materials as well.
Yeah, I like your connection, bringing, play, connecting that to habits of mind, exploration through open-minded materials, and also connecting that to visible thinking routines, because sometimes a lot of early childhood teachers, they also ponder on how to bring in the thinking routines into their lessons. And yesterday, I'm actually going to do a plug-in for Ron Richards and Mark Church's book, right, which was released yesterday. The new version of Making Thinking Visible. Exactly, the power of making thinking visible. So I was able to purchase my Kindle version last night. But one of the things that early childhood teachers usually ponder about is that connection of how to insert thinking routines into the daily routines of their learning opportunities and learning moments. Do you want to speak to that a little bit, Angela?
Sure. What I think is that the thinking routines, they promote the habits of mind. They are all interrelated. It's no two things or more things in your plate. They are all connected. So, and that was the challenge that I had in Australia, because those kids barely had a circle time. Most of the time they were playing. So I spent quite some time trying to figure out when to use the thinking routines. And when I found powerful, as I said, is when they were playing. And then we were documenting their play. And thank God now we have so much, the technology facilitates our lives in many ways. So I was always shooting videos. The videos that I show, I always share with the children. And then the children were talking about that. And I remember two kids, for example, they were doing the exact two drawings. So we thought that one of the children was copying the other child. So we put two easels there. And no, there were two different theories, two different stories behind the drawings. But we learned about that when we presented to all the children, and we used a see, think, and wonder. So we invited the children to see and say what they think about the drawings and what they wonder. And the two artists were stepping out. And when they came back, they said, no, your theories were wrong. I was trying to say this, and the other child was trying to say something else. So documentation is always powerful. But in play, that's how I found in Australia. In the US, there's more circle time. And as you saw in my world, the children had the opportunity to talk about different things, seeing an image and talking about that image. What do you see? What do you think? You wonder, or any other thinking routine, or the step inside. That it's very powerful. And we do that for storytelling and to make book extensions, and the children step inside the characters' stories, and they talk about those things. So while you are doing that, while children are engaged in that type of thinking, you are developing different types of habits of mind, like thinking interdependently when they are working together, like you saw the kids in that table, or listening with understanding and empathy. Right. Or creating new things. So it depends on the situation, but the thinking routines leverage the students' thinking. And as they do that, they are developing habits of mind. Now, with the habits of mind, well, it's important, but that will bring us to another conversation, is to help the children also become aware of the habit of mind that they are developing. For example, you can say, I love the way that you are thinking interdependently. See how you are connecting your ideas. Oh my goodness, John is a good listener. Look at how he's listening with understanding and empathy. He was able to build on this other child's story. So naming those things, that gives them more power.
Yeah. going back to naming the thinking and naming the examples and really making that thinking visible for the child to then understand and ponder on what he just did, right? So I think that's such an important piece, instead of just saying, wow, Mary and Joseph, you guys were thinking interdependently, good job. But they don't even know what were they doing, right? That brought about the interdependent thought. So that go ahead, please.
Yeah. In some cases, we think, okay, we have 16 habits of mind, and we have to teach them. Yes, but you don't have to overwhelm children. You can focus on one at a time. Oh, I love your sense of humor. Oh, you are always wondering and happy about things. I love the way your excitement when you see new things. So you can highlight that and put that maybe in an image. An image, when you see that image, that reminds you, oh, I was thinking interdependent, or I was managing my impulsivity, or things like that.
Right. Yeah, that's brilliantly said. And Angela, I think we could stay here and talk to you for the whole day. I think I could just stay here and just enjoy the conversation and enjoy the company and really enjoy the learning, because you have so much to share and so much that is connected to our educational philosophy. So before we disconnect, I want you to make a promise, a live promise, that you are going to come to Brazil and you're going to visit the 3 Escola Concept campuses, or campi. As soon as we return, we're going to have to find a way for you to join us and engage with us on additional professional development on site.
Oh, so honored with that, with that invitation, for sure. As you can see, I love to visit classes. I work in higher education, preparing teachers, but I don't see my job without being in a classroom. So I love to visit schools. I love to learn from schools. And well, that will be a big, big pleasure to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. And our school doors are open to you as well. So whatever you may need from us, we are so open to engage in partnerships and anything you may need.
Yeah, same thing here. Well, I was not able to show my last slide, but whoever wants to, let me just share something very, very fast, because just a couple of references. Yeah, that's some of the ideas that I referred to as the micro society, the pedagogy of play, design thinking. We were not able to get into the agency by design, but these are some frameworks that help you focus on thinking. So here's my email and my phone, and anyone is welcome. And just keep in mind that because every child in the world has one thing in common, is the right to play. So I love to join more people that are working towards this goal.
Absolutely. And we want to connect with more people that are working towards this goal as well, because that's what we believe in. Yeah. So Angela, thank you for spending this past hour with us. It was phenomenal. So thank you. And enjoy sunny Florida for all of us.
Rainy Florida.
Oh, rainy Florida. We're enjoying chilly Sao Paulo. Okay. So enjoy rainy Florida as we enjoy chilly Sao Paulo.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Angela. Bye-bye.